I said I would take a shower at the end of the review, not the beginning, the end of the review. Last exit to Brooklyn, get out of here. Last Exit to Brooklyn is a film adaptation of a book by the same name from 1989, directed by Ooohh Ayyy. This was his first American movie, and he was coming off of the success of Christian F., another feel-good movie, and he thought, I come to America! And without getting too much into the history of the book, it was extremely controversial in its day, in the 1960s. It was thought to be unfilmable, but that doesn't stop people from filming. All they need is some cameras and some lights and stuff. No, I'm just kidding. That doesn't stop people from filming the unfilmable, because even the most unfilmable films can be filmed to the film. The movie takes place in Boise, Idaho. I'm just kidding. The movie takes place in Brooklyn, and there's multiple characters and all sorts of intersecting plots and ultimately a big story arc, which I respect because the original book is told in this kind of episodic fashion. But what is the story arc, you ask? Everyone's miserable and no one learns anything! It's much like West Side Story if no one ever broke out into song. The movie takes place in one neighborhood. I've seen some reports that it's Red Hook or considered Sunset Park, but it's 1950s Brooklyn and it's by the Navy docks. And yet somehow it still feels like the movie was shot on a soundstage, which it wasn't. But that brings me to my first problem with the movie. It just kind of feels somehow inauthentic. Maybe they just needed more leftover from the turn of the century paper boys with those flat hats going, paper here, get your paper there. Or kids playing stickball in the street, you know. Oh shit, we just hit a car there, everybody scatter! Despite the array of very disturbing things that happen through the course of the movie, sexual violence, just kind of regular violence, it still feels very hammy, especially when everyone starts doling out their 1950s lower working middle class Brooklyn accents. Oh, hey, come on! And maybe it has something to do with the fact that for legal purposes I was born in Brooklyn and I lived there for a brief time, but there's just something inauthentic about it. You know, you never see one Sweetgreen, not one Trader Joe's. I think Jerry Orbach really lends some credence to this movie. Stephen Lang's pretty good. And Jennifer Jason Leigh, I think, pretty much can universally be agreed to be the standout role in this, and it's nice to see her have a prominent role in a movie. But other than the, at times, inspired casting, there's not much positive I could say about this one. I knew what to expect going into this one. I own the novel. Notice I didn't say I read it, but that still must count for something, right? But just a series of disturbing and horrible things happening to the characters doesn't make a movie good. It just kind of makes it misery porn. But this truly feels like one of those movies where you're like, it was uncomfortable to watch, and not for the reason that the creators intended. Especially there's one moment where, I won't give it away, but a character very over-dramatically dies very abruptly, and instead of going, oh man, my reaction was, oh, come on. Perhaps Ooohh Ayyy was thinking, you know, come award season, these movies really do well when they revolve around very dire circumstances. One might even say, dire straits. You see, Mark Knopfler of the band Dire Straits did the soundtrack. He also did the soundtrack for a great little movie called Local Hero before this, and after this, a movie you might have heard of, Princess Bride. The music in this one is pretty prominent, and I find it rather repetitive and lacking. It's as if, you know, the producers spent their money for nothing. Music and the scoring can be so important to the mood and the flow and the development of a movie. So if you take, for instance, like Taxi Driver, that would probably be one of my favorite scores. And that's also taking place in New York. And it's super seedy and it's super sketchy. But that mix of seedy and sketchy music mixed with like kind of hazy, smoky, quasi downtown jazz, almost elegant kind of element to it, makes it a little bit more obtruse and a little bit more difficult to define. At the very least too, I like that the sort of center of the plot was around this 6-month long, at that point in the story, workers' strike that's really kind of encapsulates that feeling of everything just like bubbling up and something's gonna blow at any minute. I still think I prefer something to like Naked Lunch to this in terms of that like shot in the 80s, early 90s, but depicting, 1950s seedy-ass Brooklyn that's full of drugs and degenerates and stuff. At the same time, I would much, much prefer this movie over something like an after-school special like Requiem for a Dream. Yes, well, after that whole sordid affair of watching that movie, I feel like I need to shower badly. Or more accurately, I need to shower goodly. Good gosh. Well, that's enough of me talking here in my apartment in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. That's where I am right now. Okay, stay sexy now.